Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. Listener discretion is advised. My next guest is a native of Texas. She has a BA in musical theater. She has starred in movies alongside Nicolas Cage, Ron Perlman, Marc Singer, and the late and great Art LaFleur. You may have seen her on TV shows such as Station 19, Law & Order SVU, Criminal Minds, and as Penny in Netflix's To the Bone. Currently, you can catch her as Masha, one of the lead characters in the great new horror movie Two Witches. I am pleased to say my friend, actress Rebekah Kennedy, joins me on the show today. We talk all things from horror movies onto acting roles and mindset. I can't wait for you to get to know her. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Caught on the Mic. Ladies and gentlemen, we know of the concept of Scream Queens, but what if you were to flip that concept on its head? I don't know what you would call that. But regardless, I am very happy to be joined by my friend Rebekah Kennedy. She is the star of Two Witches and a few other horror movies in the pipeline, as well as a lot of other stuff. I'm excited to take a deep dive into everything and find out more about her. How are you today?
Thanks so much for having me, first off. Super happy to be here. I'm doing well. I am ready for the warm weather.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm in the Midwest. I don't even know if there's a such thing as spring and fall anymore. It's just winter and summer.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate it because I am, like I tell my wife, I am a pumpkin spice bitch. I love the fall. You know?
That's amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Well, I say that because, sorry, my allergies. As I'm like shivering in my house. So, yeah.
I gotcha. Well, without any further ado, let's kind of set the table. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of your origin story?
Oh, gosh. Yes, like you said, I'm Rebekah Kennedy. I always feel like it's so hard to concisely, put together a very long journey into a very short amount of time. But for anyone that doesn't know me, I started acting when I was 12 on the stage, did a lot of theater growing up, went to college for that. And then after graduating college, I was still doing theater. And I'm from Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, originally. I live in LA now. And I, had plans to move to New York, but I went back to Texas after college to kind of, figure out what I was going to do. And I started being like, I want to do film and TV, but I'm not really sure how to get into it. So I started talking to some friends, anything I could, just find, and slowly got an agent that way. And then through a lot of just trial and error and hard work, I started booking. I booked house hunting with Marc Singer and the great late Art LaFleur, who passed away recently. And that was an amazing experience. I filmed that in Virginia. And that was kind of, before that, I had just done short films and student films and mostly unpaid work, pretty much, with some maybe making a little money here and there on some projects, but not a lot. And so that was my first lead in a feature film in another state. And that really kind of showed me like, oh my God, I do love this. Like, I do want to do this because, you don't really know until you do it if this is going to be for you. So I wrapped that and then went on to do Season of the Witch with Nicolas Cage, Creature with Mehcad Brooks, booked my first small television role in a show called Memphis Beat that was on TNT with Jason Lee back in the day. And then I connected with a manager that had seen my work, and he basically encouraged me to think about moving to LA. And so I came to LA and, it was like, I'm going to figure out if I like it here or if this is a place I want to live. So I came out for a couple months by myself. Actually, my mom came with me, which was amazing because my husband had to work. And so she was out here for a couple months. And I went back home and I was like, we got to move. We got to move. So literally we packed up, my gracious husband, we packed up and moved a month later.
Oh, wow.
To LA. He got a job out here pretty quickly within a couple months, and we just hit the ground running. And so, and then since then I've done guest stars on Criminal Minds and Law and Order SVU, Station 19, to name a few. And then, like you said, just recently I'm starring in Two Witches, which is a really fun horror film. Done some other horror films, one called Bastard. Done some other kind of more thriller horror, I guess. Dark Foe, Limbo. I did a really fun movie with Sons of Anarchy's David LaBrava and Mark Boone Jr. called Street Level. And then have some fun stuff coming up. So that's just kind of like a short of a long journey. But kind of where I am now.
So you have a BA in musical theater from Palm Beach Atlantic University. Mm-hmm. Musical theater, like, what is your favorite musical?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh my God, there's so many good musicals. So many good musicals. So I'm going to name two. They're kind of different. Love Rent, saw it on Broadway, saw the tour. Like I just, that musical, the music is just so brilliant. And then on the opposite end, we'll go with like Wicked, because like that's also just like the music is just brilliant as well. I saw that on Broadway with the original cast.
Oh,
with
wow.
Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth. And my friend and I, Philip, we went to New York for like a week, and we were just like sobbing the whole time, like sobbing the whole musical. Idina Menzel got a standing ovation after her third song, and I'd never seen it like, and not since has anyone as a whole audience stood up and clapped for someone like mid musical. Like that was just insane. So
that's amazing. Yeah, I would say I was expecting the Wicked one, especially coming from somebody that starred in a movie called Two Witches. Now,
yeah, it feels very cliche, but it is a great. I mean, there's so many great ones. We actually went and saw Mean Girls recently at the touring national tour, and that was fantastic. If anyone is listening that it comes through your city, definitely recommend it. It was so funny and so well done. So. But
yes. I've always had this notion of being Jean Valjean in the back of my head from Les Miserables, because that's my all time. If I'm just like cruising in my car and I want to listen to something really different, I will throw on the Les Miserables soundtrack and start to finish. Like the 20th anniversary production of that was amazing. It's got a great recording, but when you went to school for that, did you go for more of a production aspect or performance aspect?
No, it's performing. Like I said, I started doing theater when I was 12, and I started doing musicals. My first musical was Music Man, and then I did Wizard of Oz and My Fair Lady, to name a few. And then, of course, in college, we did a bunch of different ones as well. But growing up, to be honest, I planned on doing that. Like that was my love. My first love was doing musical theater, doing theater in general, straight plays.
Yeah.
That was what I had planned. Like I said, I was planning to move to New York and do all that. But up until that point, I had, done all of it. I had done singing, dancing, acting. But until I got to college, I hadn't really dived into the acting part, because not that you need to be a great actor to be in a musical, but there are not many that really have like the characters that are like super deep and dark. And, like Les Mis is one, Parade, but like a lot of them require something different, like a different kind of acting.
Right.
So I hadn't really, and when you're young, you're not, as a kid, you're not going to take some like deep, hard acting class. Like, when you're like 13, you're like, what do you know about life? Right. So, until I got to college, then I really discovered, I did a play called The Diviners, and I really discovered how much I loved the acting aspect of it more so than anything else. I still love singing and dancing. I haven't done it in years. I haven't been in a musical in years, and I haven't been on stage since 2009. So it's been a long time since I've done a play, but yeah, I really discovered how much I loved the acting side. And so when I graduated, I really more focused on that. And then I have just really more focused on that since.
Yeah. I can relate to that. Totally can relate to that. I was all through high school, I was the theater guy, and I was typecast. I was always the villain, and maybe it's just my voice. But I always thought that that's what I was. I got several scholarships to several universities. I always thought that that's what I was going to go to school for. But now I'm going to flip your concept on its head. I decided, you know what? I don't know if I really want to do this acting thing. So I did the music thing instead, started singing in rock bands. And then I just followed the musical path as opposed to the acting path. But I really can relate with kind of finding your passion, a different passion halfway through that's parallel to what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you never know. You never know until you're trying to do it if you actually love it. I mean, I still love going to musicals. I still sob during them, even if it's not a sad scene. And I, would never turn down an opportunity to be in something if the right thing came along. And I would love to eventually go back to theater and get back in a play or something. Would absolutely love that. But yeah, it's interesting. When you're doing it, you kind of find your path and like what you really love doing. And as you saw in Two Witches, and if anyone is listening and sees it or sees my work in general, I do these very, kind of dark, unique, unusual characters, and you just don't find that as much in theater. So.
Yes, and I'm glad you set that up. You teed that off for me a little bit too well. Thank you very much. But let's talk about Two Witches. Why don't you explain to my listeners the whole premise of the film?
Yeah, so Two Witches, to put it like very simply, is literally about two witches. No. So it's set up into chapters, and then there's two chapters and an epilogue, and it's about a young woman who I play named Masha, who inherits her grandmother's powers, who is also a witch when she dies. And then, so that's like, to put it simply, to not get too complicated with the plot, but yes. So the first chapter focuses on the grandmother and how she kind of gets her eye on this young couple who is pregnant and makes the young woman go crazy, stalks her, makes her lose her mind. And so then when, in my chapter called Masha, when the grandmother dies, like I said, I inherit her powers and then kind of go crazy with them.
The thing that I really loved about your character, and something that you've done really well in that, is you did a lot of physical acting as your character's journey kind of progressed in that second chapter, that really told the story without needing to tell the story, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
I really enjoyed that as an after effect of acting. How does that stay with you beyond the movie?
You mean like the character? Is the character?
Like the character itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting because we are setting up for a sequel. So
right.
I haven't, obviously, like, I've put her to bed for now, but it's going to be, I haven't yet, this will be the first time that I've done a character again later. It's like you do the film, you do the project, and then you kind of say goodbye to them and then you move on. And so this will be the first time that I'm like having to find her again, but in a new way, because she's now she's really going to have come into her own and her powers and be really powerful, and like, especially, so that's going to be really interesting. I have a really interesting ritual because I get this question a lot about, like, do these characters stick with you? How do you kind of put them aside? And they are definitely there when I'm working. My husband, if I'm working from home, as far as like if I am, if it's filming in Los Angeles or someone local, my husband will say that, like, I am different when I'm working, like not working, but like when I come home, and I don't see it. Like, it must be like a subconscious thing that I'm not trying to be different, but he claims that I am subtly like off until I stop the project. But which I find like really fascinating, because I'm like, I would love to know, like, what am I doing that seems different?
Right.
Like, can you record me? Like, what is happening? But after I wrap, I just, I have like I said, a beautiful ritual of just saying goodbye to them, thanking them for their time, for their, wisdom for what they have taught me as a person, as an actor, and stretched me in ways that maybe I didn't know I could do, and then saying goodbye. It seems like super corny, but that's kind of the only way I can let them go and like feel like I did them justice. And because little things will, like, residual stuff will stick with you for sure. Especially, I played Esther in SVU. I loved that character so much, and I only got to play her for a week. But it's like if she hadn't died in the show, at the end I would have happily played her for forever, like to see where her journey could have gone. And so that one was especially difficult to let go of, because I felt like she was so special, and that it's hard sometimes.
With these darker, nuanced characters that you tend to play, or that you're finding yourself playing, do you find yourself becoming a bigger fan of the genre, or like taking deeper dives into the genre as far as like character study goes, kind of paying attention to what other actors and actresses are doing in their roles and borrowing influence in that light?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was Tom Hanks who said, you're dope if you don't steal from everyone you know. Right. And so I love that. And I love that thought of like, okay, what can I take from this? And not that you're doing an imitation of anything, right, but like my acting teacher told this great story of watching a friend in a film, and afterwards he was like, oh, I loved this one moment that you did, and the friend was like, oh, that was my Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice. It's like you would never know that. It's like you're not doing an imitation of them, but you are borrowing something that that is familiar to you, or a person that maybe. It's like, oh, this character is that person that I know, so I'm just going to play them. That person is really interesting. And I definitely am loving the fact that horror has shifted in a way that where we're getting these really amazing characters. Not that we haven't had them, but that it's not just surface. It's not just the Scream Queen. And I put that in quotes, as far as like, oh, the woman that screams and cries and then like kills the bad guy, and that's it. Like there's such beautiful characters being developed in these films that are heartbreaking and heart-wrenching, and that you root for, but not just because they kill the bad guy, but because they have like these beautiful deep arcs to them. And that is really fun to watch. I mean, like an example would just be like I don't know if you've seen the Black Phone that came out with. Yeah, loved it. Yeah. And Madeline McGraw, the sister. I mean, that scene when she's confronting the dad, the abusive father, was just heart wrenching, and she was so brilliant in it. And it's like that's the amazing kind of work you can do in horror films. And like how deep and like dark and you can go with it, which was just incredible to see. And there's so many performances like that. And it, like I said, it's not new in that we haven't had Linda Blair and The Exorcist and like all of those way back when. But it's just nice that there is like more and more of that happening for actors to feel like we're not just like running through the woods and getting our clothes ripped off and that's it.
The genre itself has had quite the evolution. To be honest and fully transparent, I've just come back to it myself within the past 2 or 3 years. So I feel like I have this treasure trove of all these movies that I've missed out on that I'm just now catching for the first time. Just from your perspective and somebody that's in that field and in that genre, where do you feel that horror movies, where was their inflection point, if you were to point one out in the past 20 years, where the movies kind of turned and they became more character driven than they were maybe previously?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it or look back, because it feels kind of like there's always kind of an evolution going. Like you have, like back in the day when you had like The Exorcist, you had The Shining, you had all those amazing performances that were done by brilliant actors at the time and are still, obviously still brilliant. But and then you kind of have, you have a wave of a little bit of the slasher fun. And then you kind of get back into M. Night Shyamalan with like The Sixth Sense, like where you really kind of turned it on its head, and something we had never seen before, and was nominated for Oscars. Like that, just like for a horror genre, it just doesn't happen. Wish it happened more, because there's definitely been performances since that have been worthy of being recognized in that capacity for sure. And then you kind of have like the remakes a bit, where people go back to the slashers and what people know, and then you kind of get back where you have like Hereditary and things like that kind of again introduce something kind of new. And then I'm not sure the exact pinpoint, but you have kind of like an interesting because people think horror and it's very cliche to them. But if you introduced movies that are actually really like make you think and are on a deeper level and are like, this is actually about postpartum depression, and not what it seems to be. And like Barbarian this year was so fun, and just like it's great for the horror genre, because now I feel like you don't know what you're going to get. Like there's so many fun things being directed and produced and put in the theater that it's going to be really fun to see what comes out next.
I think you actually answered it without even realizing it.
Probably.
I was thinking about that as I was listening to you. And like, if I were to pinpoint it, I would say it would be kind of the combination of The Sixth Sense and M. Night Shyamalan, coming out about the same time as the Blair Witch Project. The first Blair Witch Project came out. And then you fast forward about 2-3 years later, the very first Saw movie came out.
Yes.
And then it was almost like it was less reliant upon jump scares and gimmicky characters and more reliant upon the psychology of where a scare comes from.
Yeah.
How do you break that loose and analyze that and make a good movie and craft a good movie around that?
Absolutely. And the first Saw movie especially was terrifying.
Yes.
Terrifying.
Yes.
I remember watching it with my roommate in college, and we were like, because back then, I won't say how old I am, but back then there wasn't, obviously like there wasn't as access to, all of the trailers and all of the stuff that's so easily accessible now. And I don't 100% sure that we knew what we were getting ourselves into. And we were like eating dinner and we're like, wow, we had to like stop. We're like, why are we eating? Like, this is probably not a good choice to be doing during the first one. Yeah. It was totally new and something totally different. And like, it's still in my, I can still see the scene when he wakes up and they're in that room, first time still. So like those movies that like just kind of sear into your mind, those scenes are, unforgettable for sure.
Yes.
And then I love The Conjuring and all of those movies as well. Like you said, like really diving into like the psychological side of it, and based in some truth, and like that's all just like terrifying.
Yeah, you've referenced The Exorcist a few times, and for me, that was the first time I ever saw The Exorcist. I was 12 years old. I was reading the book simultaneously when I saw it. And so I'm like halfway through the book. I'm like, okay, I'm finally going to watch the movie. And just being who I was, where I was at that point in life, just the scenes, the blasphemy, like halfway through it. And it doesn't matter what a person's religious affiliation is. Your 12-year-old kid, you see something blasphemous that's just jarring and shocking like that. You're tapping into a sense of fear that maybe you didn't even know you had. So you fast forward that mindset to something like Saw, or even just like Barbarian, because that was a good reference too, where there's a really good character study and how you almost become a character yourself in the audience,
Yeah, absolutely. And and you speaking of like my first horror film, I was 11 and it was the It miniseries.
Oh, so, fantastic.
Yeah, I convinced at a birthday party, my good friend, still birthday party, we went to Blockbuster, as you do. And I convinced, I don't know why, we'd have to ask them why they let us, I convinced the parents to let us rent it. And of course I scarred my friend for life, and I'm sure all of her friends that came, but I went home the next day and I was like, Mom, can we rent a movie at Blockbuster? And she was like, okay. And she's like, I knew you had something you wanted to, like, you were trying to find. Like, it wasn't like, oh, we'll just go rent a movie. Like, you had a specific movie. And I went and I wanted them to rent that one again because I felt like I couldn't fully watch it because the girls were like, screaming and like acting like, girls. And so we watched it again. And my mom was like watching it and she's like, what am I letting you watch? Obviously looking back, it was fine as far as like, there wasn't any, nudity or anything like that in it. But, that was kind of my introduction into horror. And I like ever since then, I get it from my dad's side of the family for sure. Ever since then, I have just like loved it. So it's interesting. I never imagined when I was 11 that I would be actually acting in it. So that's been a fun full circle.
So in context with the work that you do and some of the work that you've done, because you've made these unique characters, specifically Masha, do you feel that your sense of shock value has like depleted? Like you're a little less surprised by things because of what you've had to immerse yourself into? Do you get scared as easy as you might have just a few years ago?
Probably not. No. Unfortunately, but I mean, I Barbarian was pleasantly surprising. I wasn't necessarily scared in it, but I loved the first act, how it set up so well. And then it had a complete 180. And like, then you're like, it's a new character. And Justin Long was so brilliant in that role. So funny. So, I mean, I wasn't like necessarily scared watching it, but I still loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I will find that like if we're watching like a scary movie with like other people, they'll be like this, oh, and I'm just like waiting. But I sometimes do jump. If I do jump, then it has done well because I'm definitely not one now that is easily scared or yeah.
I'm kind of in a similar sense. That's why I've leaned so much heavier towards the found footage genre, because that is probably the last thing that truly terrifies me, just because you don't know what's happening. And, going back to Barbarian, because I'm just going to jump all over the place like an ADHD kid.
That's fine.
But when I was in the movie theater with my wife and we were watching that movie, I forgot that Justin Long was even in the movie. And the scene where it does do the 180, because I don't want to reveal it for people that haven't seen it. I think my wife and I even looked at each other and were like, is this over already?
Yeah. Like what just happened? Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh, okay. But what is the last great horror movie that you've watched?
I'm trying to think of what I've seen recently. I mean, was it Barbarian? Maybe. I'm trying to think of Megan. I did like Megan.
You did?
I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't watched it yet.
I did like it a lot. I mean, I wasn't like scared necessarily, but I thought that it was like so brilliantly self-aware of like what it was making, and it was funny, and the acting was great, and it just was such a flip on the Chucky type movie, which was really fun. So yeah, I mean, I really liked that one. But yeah, like I mentioned Black Phone, which I really liked. I read the short by Joe Hill before we saw it, and I thought they did a brilliant job of like expanding the story, but also keeping it to what he had written. And also Ethan Hawke was just like terrifying, and how in a role like that in a maybe ever, I don't know, a long time.
Yeah, he was really good in that. And that's kind of funny because I think that's one of those movies where the trailer was a little bit misleading, because you almost think the last time I saw Ethan Hawke in that genre was the very first Purge movie. So it's like
yes.
For him to go from hero to villain was just crazy to me. I don't know. Maybe it's just something internal, but
I loved Sinister, especially the first one. It's just really chilling. It was a really chilling movie, especially when it was like revealed what was actually happening. I thought it was brilliant. So I think those are some of the last ones that I can recall. The seeing at I did like Fresh a lot. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Have not seen that one yet.
It's on Hulu with Sebastian Stan.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
I know which one. Yes, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
I thought he was so great because obviously he always is known as like also the hero, also the guy that, you know, you root for. And in this, obviously he's the villain, like that, you know, isn't a spoiler. But he was great. I mean, he was so, it's like one that you love to hate, you know, so charming. And you're like, no, don't be that way.
Who are some actors, actresses that have influenced you along your journey?
It's funny because a lot of the ones that I think about when people ask me, like, who are your favorite actors or actresses, aren't necessarily in the horror genre, though. Like, I love Toni Collette. I think she's brilliant and was like, I mean, stunning in Sixth Sense, Hereditary, like anything she does. But it's specifically, if we're talking horror genre, those movies, I mean, that is the type of acting that I want, you know, to do in a horror. Like if I'm going to accept a movie or a role in a horror film, I want to be able to bring that kind of, I mean, even if it's not that kind of crazy character, but just that kind of depth to it, that kind of where you don't just sit back on your laurels and kind of sleep through it, you know, like, oh, I know what this is. This is a horror film, so I'll just kind of show up and do it and go home. But I've actually done the work on the character, right, which I admire so much. But I mean, I love, you know, it's like Meryl Streep. I mean, if I could just meet her, like that would be enough, honestly. I don't even know if I could do a scene with her because I probably would just be freaking out the whole time. But like, you know, Viola Davis, Jessica Chastain, which I loved her in, oh gosh, Mama. I was like trying to remember the movie since we're talking horror, which I think they're making another one, like a sequel to that. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. Who else? I mean, as far as like, I mean, there's so many Cate Blanchett. Like, there's just so many great actors. I don't know, that just that anytime you watch them, they're good, even if you don't love the movie itself. They're always just something different. You know, like they're surprising, and that's what I hope to be.
Have you had the opportunity to meet any of these heroes or any of the people that you've looked up to?
No, not yet. Not any of those. Not yet.
Who's a person that you've met that you've just been completely shocked by?
Nicolas Cage was great. Super nice guy. Like I, you know, worked with him so long ago now, but you know, we were filming in Louisiana in August, so it was just awfully hot. If anyone has ever been there, don't go in August; it's horrible. And we were wearing, you know, 14th century like dresses, you know, outfits, and they were unforgiving. I mean, these amazing wardrobe designers were literally sewing these costumes. I mean, they were legit. And I had to have someone help me get in it and get out of it. Like, you know, you just stand there with your arms up and like someone comes and helps you get it off. But it was so hot, and it was like my first day on set, and it was my first big movie like that. Like, I had not worked on like a $40 million budget movie, and I was so nervous. And he was just so kind and like, oh, you need anything? Like, make sure I had water, and that anything that would come by, he would just like pull it off the tray and like hand it to me. And he had to use this like big retractable sword to kill me. And every time he would ask if I was good, if I was okay, like if anything, you know, and he didn't know me at all. Yeah. Like, and, you know, he was the star of that movie. So that was pleasantly, not that I didn't think he was going to be nice, but I thought he was extra nice considering he didn't have to do any of that. So, you know, I worked with Keanu Reeves, and he is just as everyone says. He's so nice, you know, introduces himself, is kind, very low key, chill, doesn't make a scene, kind of just disappears out the back, you know, kind of actor. So everything anyone has said about him is been very true.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. So is there a genre that you haven't done yet that you really want to do?
I haven't done much comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, not yet. And so I'm scared because I mean, comedy is so hard, but I would love, I've been doing a horror comedy coming up, but I don't know if my part's particularly funny, but Yeah, I haven't done much comedy, so that would be a challenge. It would be fun and interesting to see, where I would kind of fit in. I'm not even sure exactly, but where I'd kind of fit into that world would be fun. I mean, I did a web series that was a comedy, but I haven't done a full feature or show or anything.
I wonder if to prepare for comedy, if you just got to sharpen the improv chops like none other.
Yeah, and I think for me, you would just really come in as if it were a drama.
Right.
Like my coach always says, you prepare as if, you can't think it's funny. Like you can't know that your character is funny or your lines are funny. You can't think they're funny because otherwise if you think it, then the audience will not laugh because they know that you're aware. So it's you prepare as if you're doing a dramatic role. And then he's like, right before you go, you just remind yourself it's a comedy.
Huh. Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
Because when you're not putting you've done all the work, because things are only funny really when characters are not aware of it and they're so in it.
Right.
And they're fully invested and they're not hovering on the surface. So I thought that was an interesting way of looking at it.
I think there's also the knack for ironic situational observations, right? Everyday things, because you can find comedy in about everything if you just kind of push it over the top to a certain
That's why
extent.
I love Jim Gaffigan, because his comedy is just everyday things that you are like, oh my God, yeah. That is funny.
For sure. So what are some of the things that inspire you in life? People
that don't give up, especially now with the internet and how accessible it is, and with TikTok and Instagram and all of the social media things, when you're scrolling through the reels or the TikToks, inevitably, you watch one or two and then you get the algorithm sends you more and more. And I will find myself on a Tuesday randomly, okay, I'll just check my whatever. And then I'm weeping because I'm watching some video of some, kid or person that has overcome something. And that it seems silly, but also that is a great reminder of how being grateful for what you do have. And then also that things are hard. They may seem hard, but you can do it.
Yeah.
You can keep going another day. It's on my brain. My husband will be like, are you crying? I'm shut stop. I'm watching some really sad, video on some kid or whatever. And it's I don't know this kid, but I feel that triumph for them, that the fact that people just overcome things that they shouldn't have to, is really, really inspiring to me. With the pandemic, it's been hard. It's been very isolating. Now it's getting back to normal, quote unquote, but for a long time, it was very difficult. And I know a lot of people are still struggling and still suffering from financially or emotionally or physically of loss, over the last 3 years. So that for me has been an interesting, silly, but also a good reminder of what you do have and how you can be inspired to not give up and keep going no matter what you're doing, whether it be in the entertainment or something else.
That's a very good observation. And one of the things you pointed out is something that we circle back to a lot on my show is kind of the after effects of the pandemic, because now we're probably in our recovery phase. How do we deal with normal now? We knew what normal was in December 2019, but what does normal look like moving forward February 2023? And one of the things you also kind of mentioned was TikTok and the social media scrolling, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it can get the better of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But somebody with your occupation, to find a silver lining of the pandemic, it has created extra layers of media for you to craft your art into, hasn't it, to some degree? Streaming really became more exploited as a result of the pandemic. So there's more movies available on streaming, which is good news because it's more opportunities for actors and actresses to hone their craft and execute those things. So what are your feelings about what the future of your art form is?
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a great point because, only so many movies can go in the theater. It costs so much money to put them in the theater that there's a reason that it can only be like really mostly, the high budget films, unless, you've got your, outliers like Terrifier 2 that has made tons of money and that was made for nothing, which is an incredible example of like what you can do with a low budget horror. But because of the streaming, you have this opportunity for people to see your work that maybe wouldn't have gotten to, ordinarily, or because of the pandemic, because people are still used to sitting at home and watching things at home. I mean, I still love going to the movies, but we do watch a lot of things at home too. That people are used to it. They're like, oh, your movie's on where? On Hulu? Cool, I'll go watch it. Or your movie's on Amazon? Like, cool, I'll go watch it. Whereas like before, it might have been like more of a struggle to get people to like do that, even though it's like so accessible before. It just wasn't like necessarily thought of before. I mean, so we didn't even do Zoom before the pandemic. Like, so I didn't, and it's like now I get together with my college friends and we do a Zoom every so often. And it's like, we could have been doing this for years after, but we didn't even think about it until you couldn't go out.
Yeah.
So as far as the future goes, I think that will just open up, like you said, even more opportunities for actors to be in movies, even higher budget that just go to streaming, even movies that have names that just go to streaming, that you'll have the opportunity to work with actors of that caliber, not just in the theater, but also on Hulu, Netflix, Prime, wherever the movie is released, which is great for us, for actors that are, have worked, but are still, obviously working their way up. So I think hopefully it'll just only be good. And then, the streaming also is more and more shows too. It's a little scary for network TV. Not really sure where that's going to go, but at least for the streaming platforms, there's more and more opportunities for actors on shows, which is great.
Yeah.
Because before, obviously, we just had the networks and that was it. And there wasn't very many opportunities for people that weren't, leading a pilot. So now there is that. So I'm hopeful that will just be, it's been a little slow as far as the industry goes the last few years for obvious reasons. So I'm hopeful that, people are getting back into it and back into the game and back into their projects that maybe got on hold are now hopefully starting to come to fruition. So
as somebody that prides himself in being a nerd on pop culture and nostalgia, I got to tell you how I kind of view it is very parallel. The mid 90s, there was this huge indie movie boom. And that's really what made Quentin Tarantino. It's what made Kevin Smith. It's what made Richard Linklater. If it wasn't for that boom of indie movies in the mid 90s, I don't know that we would have what we've had. Again, silver lining moment as a result of the pandemic. And so I think it's great for things like Two Witches and other independently made movies to have this platform and then to utilize social media in tandem with that to build these projects up and build awareness of these projects.
Yeah, because before social media, if you put a movie on at Blockbuster or like whatever straight to video, the only people that saw is if you had an advertisement on billboards or radio or TV. I mean, now, and it's like a lot of indie movies can't afford that. You can't afford to put a billboard on, in Los Angeles or do trailers beyond YouTube and all of those. And so with social media, it's like, someone likes your movie and they have, a ton of followers and they put it out there. And then like people are like, oh, I'm going to go check that movie out that they've never even heard of. So that, it does have, social media always has its downside. It has its dark hole of the abyss that you can fall into.
Right.
But it also has there also is a great platform of it to network. I've met, filmmakers and producers and directors and other actors, obviously, online. I would never have connected with if I didn't have that. After Two Witches came out, a director watched it and then he reached out to me and he was like, let's meet for coffee. And we did, the next week. And now we're in collaborations to do something together. So it's like, that is the bright spot, the inspirational side of it, that you can connect with people that love the same things you love, and start, a relationship of working relationship. So I think that all of that, it can be very toxic, but I just have to keep reminding myself when it does get, okay, just put it down for a while.
Right.
And then, find the inspiration again for it.
That's fantastic. So what is in the pipeline for you, young lady?
Yes. So I have 3 movies that are in post-production that should hopefully be coming out this year, maybe next, depending. One is called The Veil, that I filmed in Pennsylvania last March. I play a young Amish woman who has... I'm like, what am I allowed to say, actually? Who has fled her home and is coming... I'm like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to say here, or what I'm allowed to say. It's a thriller mystery. I don't know what else to say about the plot. I just play a young Amish woman because I don't want to spoil anything. I'm just realizing that I could easily spoil the movie, which would be bad, obviously. So just put it that way, that I have fled my home, and you'll see what happens when you see it. There goes that. And I had a fantastic time working on it, and I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a really special movie. I have another movie called The Unseen with Breaking Bad's R.J. Mitty that I filmed in Chicago last year. And he plays a lawyer who starts seeing visions. And I cannot say anything about my character other than I play a young woman named Millie, who may or may not be from someone's past. And that's all I can say about her. The spoiler. But they just announced international distribution. So hopefully domestic will be coming soon, and all of those good things. So I'm excited, really excited for people to see it. And then I have another sci-fi movie thriller called The Other Kind, where it's about people in a small town that start mysteriously disappearing.
That's
so
amazing.
That's really all I can say about that one. It's hard when it's like you do like thriller or mystery or horror, and you can't really ever say what it's about until it's out. So.
But a slate of 3 awesome sounding movies is not a bad place to be in life right now, is it?
No, I'm super grateful. It's funny because, you do these, years prior, and then everything always kind of comes out at the same time. So it makes you look like you're really busy, which is great. And then I have some things coming up that haven't been announced yet, so I can't really say too much about them. But yeah, and then like you said, Two Witches is out now for anyone that is interested in watching. You can watch it on Amazon, on iTunes, and Apple TV as well. So. Yes,
and everybody, please watch that movie. I enjoyed it. I found it through our mutual friend, Joshua Sterling Bragg from Haunting Season. He pointed it out to me. I checked it out, so I've shared it with other people. Rebekah, what is your advice for making the world a better place right now as you see it?
I mean, it seems cliche, I guess, but be kind. It's especially now, it's so easy to get like frustrated and like level 10 really quickly with people. And obviously, like the saying goes, we don't know what someone else is going through. So try to give people grace and space for that, especially during this time. And, encourage others, encourage others. I'm in a acting class right now where we had to write out 10 possible ways to work more this year. And one of mine was encouraging others and like celebrating their work. So I think that's really important as an actor and just in the entertainment industry. It's really easy to get into yourself and into your work and what you're working on. But I really try to also, focus on others' work and celebrate their work, and putting that out there is really important. So I think that can, lift someone's spirits when they're feeling down. So those are some of the ways that I can make this world better.
I absolutely love that. I love the fact that we've become friends through this whole social networking thing. And thank you so much for doing the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, first of all, for watching the movie. I really appreciate it. It's a fun little crazy indie, and so the fact that anyone is seeing it at all has just been really great. So I really appreciate it.
Well, and it just sounds like there's more goodness to come later down the line, and I think we'll be paying attention, and I know my listeners are going to be following and paying attention to everything you've got coming out moving forward.
Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to coming back to talk about the future projects.
Yes.
When I can talk about them more. Yes.
Rebekah,
yes.
Thank you very much for doing this show. The world's a better place with you in it. Big thanks to my friend Rebekah Kennedy for doing the show today. That was a lot of fun. It was a great conversation. Check out the movie Two Witches, available right now on Amazon Prime Video. You can also search it out by looking for it on iTunes. Make sure you give Rebekah a follow on Instagram. Search her out. She's pretty easy to find. I will have her tagged in this episode's photo. Make sure you're giving me a follow on all forms of social media, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, so you can keep up to date with all things Caught on the Mic. You can also visit me at www.caughtonthemic.com. Make sure you give this podcast a review on Spotify and on the Apple Podcast platform. You know I appreciate those 5 stars. This has been Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. I'm Michael Clark. Until next time, thank you.